In Boston's historic, cobblestone North End district, defying the relentless march of time and the city's ceaseless cacophony, stood the old Boston Bakehouse, a bakery that had endured for over a century, rising like a venerable monument against the currents of time, every morning, long before dawn. While the city streets were still submerged in the deep silence of slumber, the bakery, enveloping its surroundings with the delightful aroma of fresh butter, warm bread and coffee brewed slowly over a charcoal fire, would gently yet resolutely interrupt that sweet slumber. The early hours of the morning in the bakery's dimly lit, steamy kitchen were filled with the rhythmic thudding of dough mixers, the soft clatter of newly baked trays, and the faint whispers of coffee machines. This was more than just a bakery. It was a magical place where time seemed to stand still, where memories were baked into every loaf and every crumb carried a story from the past. In Boston's oldest bakery, every morning before dawn, even before the sun's first rays touched the Manhattan skyline, a quiet, almost invisible pastry chef would begin her work. Everyone knew her only as the woman who smelled of dough, her pristine white chef's uniform, her wavy blonde hair lightly dusted with flour, and her gaze, always thoughtful and cast downwards, made her seem like an integral part of the bakery, an almost invisible silent spirit. But she harbored a small, heartwarming secret, known to no one else. Every day she would leave a slice of hot, freshly baked pastry, still steaming from the oven, and a cup of freshly brewed coffee for an elderly homeless man whose identity remained unknown to her, living amidst the grey trash cans and worn newspapers in the city's oldest, most forgotten alleyways. This was more than a duty, more than an obligation. It was a silent, priceless need emanating from the depths of her soul. While those around her scorned her kindness, with mocking smiles on their lips and dismissive glances in their eyes, she saw a shadow in the old man's eyes. This shadow was not merely the fatigue of a homeless man, but also the indelible marks of war, the excruciating pain of loss, the immeasurable depths of oblivion, and the cruel trampling of human dignity. Until that shadow, years later, emerged in Clara's wedding hall, standing tall and dignified in a gleaming Navy military uniform at the entrance. That day, not only hearts, but also prejudices would be irrevocably shattered, one by one. This story powerfully reveals how a small, ordinary act of kindness can, in the most unexpected moments, transform an entire city and even dismantle societal prejudices. If you too believe that true heroes aren't always found in headlines and that the greatest sacrifices are often made in silence, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Watch until the very end to witness every moment of this unforgettable story and feel the priceless power of a small act of kindness. Clara Jensen, in her mid-30s, was of medium height, but her shoulders and arms, bearing the indelible marks of years of rigorous physical training and military discipline, hinted at a subtly athletic build. Her wavy blonde hair was usually neatly tucked under her white chef's hat, and her face, despite the bakery's steaming warmth, always carried a calm, serene, and thoughtful expression. Her eyes, glistening like amber, were warm and sensitive, yet glowed with a deep resolve and a wisdom born of past pain. She was a veteran who had served voluntarily in a military support unit, perhaps in logistics or medical aid, witnessing the brutal face of war, its devastation, and the psychological toll it took on the human spirit, yet always operating in the background like a shadow. She had experienced numerous losses in her life, intimately understanding the meaning of pain and sacrifice and the profound resilience of the human soul, however fragile it might seem. Her work at the bakery offered her a routine, a sanctuary, a form of escape. Every morning, at 4:30, long before the city's first lights awakened, when the streets were still deserted, she would cycle to the bakery. She wore a loose-fitting, plain sweatshirt without the bakery's logo, old denim jeans, and worn athletic shoes. As she cycled in the crisp, cold Boston air, the only thought consuming her mind was that old man, Victor Vance. Victor Vance, in his late 70s, was a tall man, whose once athletic and strong physique was now clearly visible, though his shoulders were slumped and his body worn. He had grey hair and a tired gaze. The deep lines on his face were not merely signs of old age, but also the indelible marks of war's cruel blows and life's unspeakable losses. In his past, he had performed great acts of heroism, having been a fearless naval officer in one of the Navy's most elite units. During the Gulf War, he had served in one of the most challenging submarine operations, a courageous commander who had extracted his team safely from enemy lines, even when death was breathing down his neck. However, after a tragic family loss, he had lost his wife and children in a horrific accident. His soul was shattered, and he completely withdrew from society, trapped in the well of his own grief, in an endless solitude. Now in the cold, damp, grey streets of Boston, he would sleep in a corner, confronting life's harsh reality anew each day. For him, life was merely about waking up to the next day, finding the next meal, the next cup of coffee. But Emily Sanchez's read as Clara Jensen for narrative consistency, underestimated kindness would one day echo throughout the entire city, even the entire country, igniting a priceless movement of goodwill that would transform thousands of lives. Clara, every morning at 5 o'clock as the bakery's warm steam still danced in the kitchen, would take out the first fresh, crispy pastries from the oven and brew the coffee, its delightful aroma spreading throughout the kitchen. These pastries were still hot, their powdered sugar subtly melting from the steam. Guided by a voice from her heart, she would write a simple thank you or a short, meaningful wish on a small note card, "Hope you have a good day," or "Stay warm." She would carefully place the note, along with the pastry, in a small cardboard box and a steaming cup of coffee in a cardboard cup beside it. Then, unseen by anyone, she would exit through the back door of the bakery and place the box near the grey trash can on the corner of the street, under an old newspaper. Victor would wait for her every morning, just like he awaited the sunrise. For him, this was not merely sustenance, but also a beacon of hope, proof that he was not forgotten, that he still held value. Clara never spoke to Victor, nor did she ever question who he was. She saw Victor not merely as a homeless man, but as a human being with a past, with pain and with unspeakable honor. This was a sacred ritual for her, a silent prayer that nourished her soul. Mr. Arthur Hayes, the bakery manager, in his 50s, was a medium-built man with thinning hair, glasses, and a rule-abiding, meticulous, and overly pragmatic demeanor. He accounted for every penny in the bakery and had no tolerance for waste. When he first noticed Clara's small act of kindness, his eyebrows furrowed in anger. Then he laughed with a nervous, mocking tone. "Clara, again. Why waste so many pastries? You don't even know who that man is. Maybe he's just spending his money on drinks, or worse." Lily Adams, a bakery employee in her early 20s, was a young, energetic, and gossipy girl. She also thought Clara was soft-hearted, naive, and impractical, sometimes even mocking her behind her back with whispers. "Oh, Clara, why bother? That man's already used to it. What if you don't come one day? Maybe he'll just find another bakery for himself. Don't tire yourself out for nothing." While those around her scorned her kindness, ignoring her silent sacrifice, Clara saw a deep, unspeakable shadow in the old man's eyes. This shadow was the indelible mark of war, the chilling pain of loss, the deep, bottomless pit of oblivion, and the cruel trampling of human dignity. Clara would remain silent in the face of these criticisms, only a faint, bitter smile appearing on her lips. For her, this kindness was not a waste of time, but a need of her soul, of her conscience, a form of penance. Victor Vance would wake up every morning long before the sun rose, shivering in the biting cold, and walk to the corner of the alley behind the bakery, like a monument to hope. When he found that tin box, the still warm pastry and freshly brewed coffee inside were not merely breakfast, but a precious elixir that nourished his soul, warming his frozen heart. He meticulously saved the note cards, read them, and etched every word into his heart. This small, anonymous act of kindness would re-warm his frozen, ice-cold soul each morning, giving him a tiny reason to hold on to life. Victor didn't know who Clara was, or why she performed this kindness. He knew her only as the bakery angel, the only miracle he believed in. Victor's past was filled with heroism and honor. In the Gulf War, he had served in one of the Navy's toughest submarine operations, a fearless, cold-blooded commander who had extracted his team safely from enemy lines, without a single casualty, even when staring death in the face. But the trauma he experienced after a horrific accident in which he lost his family, his wife and children, had shattered his soul, causing him to completely withdraw from society, transforming him from a proud officer into a homeless, invisible shadow. Clara's fiancé, Marco Rossi, in his late 30s, was a tall, handsome man who always unconditionally supported Clara, a helpful and understanding individual. He too knew about Clara's small act of kindness, sometimes accompanying her. Marco would often suggest to Clara, "Clara, perhaps we can help that man in a more concrete way, find him a shelter, or offer him a job." But Clara would reply, "Marco, what that man wants is not help. He just wants to be seen as a human being. Offering him a warm cup of coffee can sometimes be more valuable than offering him a shelter or a job." This was a priceless lesson she had learned from her old military experiences, from the realities of war, from the depths of the human soul. Some wounds, she knew, could be healed not just with a bowl of hot soup, but with a look, a smile, 2 words written on a note card, a touch. Months rapidly passed, flowing like Boston's Charles River. Clara and Marco's wedding day finally arrived. Boston's elegant Harborview ballroom event, filled with the city's elite relatives and friends, overflowed to celebrate the bride and groom. The hall was adorned with white tulle and sparkling crystal chandeliers. Bride Clara, in a simple, elegant white dress, radiated light as always, her face beaming with indescribable happiness. Among the guests were bakery manager Mr. Hayes, Lily Adams, and Clara's other friends. Everyone danced, enjoyed themselves, raised toasts, celebrating this beautiful, hopeful day. Just then, the main doors of the hall slowly and majestically opened, as if a miracle were unfolding. Into the room walked Victor Vance, in his gleaming navy blue official military uniform, shoulders back, steps slow but with an unshakable resolve. Every medal, every insignia on his uniform silently proclaimed his past heroism. The deep lines on his face, contrasting with the splendor of his uniform, told a bittersweet story of a lifetime. The hall instantly fell silent. The music stopped, laughter ceased. Everyone stared at him in astonishment. No one recognized Victor. His presence was a question mark, a mystery. While those around her scorned her kindness with mocking smiles on their lips and dismissive glances in their eyes, she saw a shadow in the old man's eyes. Until that shadow, years later, emerged in Clara's wedding, standing tall and dignified in a gleaming Navy military uniform at the entrance. That day, not only hearts but also prejudices would be irrevocably shattered, one by one. This was a turning point. Victor Vance slowly advanced towards the center of the hall. Like a general. Behind him, 12 naval officers in their gleaming pressed uniforms followed Victor like an honor guard. Each of their faces bore expressions of respect and admiration. Their leader was Commander David Miller. Commander Miller, in his 40s, was a charismatic and authoritative figure who knew Victor's military past and heroism intimately. Commander Miller took the microphone. His voice resonated through the wedding hall, loud enough to capture everyone's attention. "Distinguished guests, on this special day we have a very special, very honorable guest among us. Many of you may not know him. He lived among us for years, silently in the shadows, invisible in the streets of Boston. He is a naval officer, Commander Victor Vance, who performed unspeakable acts of heroism in war, but whose soul was shattered after a tragic family loss, causing him to withdraw from society, a forgotten hero." Whispers of astonishment rose from every corner of the hall. Some guests stood up from their seats. Lily Adams' mouth hung open in amazement, her hand covering it. Bakery manager Mr. Hayes's eyes widened in disbelief, his glasses slipping down his nose. Prejudices were shattering, one by one. Commander Miller began to recount Victor's past, his heroism, and his suffering with an emotionally charged tone. "Commander Vance, during the Gulf War, in one of the Navy's toughest submarine operations, facing death head-on, he was the hero who saved his team from enemy lines without a single casualty. The deep wounds he sustained in the war and the unspeakable pain of losing his family in a horrific accident led him to this invisible, homeless life. But one person managed to see him there, on that cold street corner. She saw him not as a homeless man, but as a human being. Every morning, shivering in the freezing cold of Boston, she left him a slice of warm pastry and a cup of hot coffee. She never questioned him, never asked who he was. She simply valued him unconditionally. That person is our bride, Clara Jensen." A thunderous applause erupted in the hall, the sound echoing off the walls. The eyes of the wedding guests welled up with tears, some openly weeping. Prejudices, the chains of arrogance and ignorance, were shattering, one by one, irrevocably. Victor Vance, in his gleaming uniform, walked towards Clara. His eyes held gratitude and sorrow, as well as bittersweet memories of the past. He took Clara's hand. This hand was a symbol of the kindness, compassion, and humanity extended to him for years. Clara and Marco, using the money they received as wedding gifts, decided to serve not only themselves but also their community. They launched a meaningful program called the Silent Table, providing breakfast service to homeless veterans. They personally restored an old, unused, dilapidated garage or warehouse in the city, renaming it the Compassion Hub. This place became a sanctuary where homeless veterans not only received a warm breakfast but also found a welcoming environment, shared their stories, supported each other, and tried to reintegrate into society. Victor Vance became one of the first and most loyal volunteers of this invaluable program. Every morning he would serve breakfast to homeless veterans like himself, wounded and forgotten by war, sharing memories of the past and providing solace. Victor would regularly send thank-you postcards to Clara, each postcard demonstrating that kindness was not unreciprocated, that every small touch created a profound impact. On these postcards, sometimes there were drawings of Gulf War submarines, sometimes just, "Thank you, my angel, I will never forget you." As the story progressed, Clara's small, silent acts of kindness began to visibly transform into an unforeseen, massive social impact, influencing all of Boston. Ms. Olivia Chen, a local journalist, meticulously reported on these touching events. Olivia, in her 30s, was an ambitious, truth-seeking, fearless journalist who believed in justice. She wrote heartwarming news articles with headlines such as "Boston's Lost Hero Returns" and "How a Baker Girl's Underestimated Kindness Changed a Life, Revived a Community." The news resonated widely in the city's leading newspapers and local television channels, gaining national media attention. The city was deeply moved by this movement of kindness. People began supporting the Silent Table program. Volunteers increased, donations multiplied. A small act of kindness became the genesis of a grand transformation, a societal awakening. Victor Vance, within the Silent Table program, began to heal, thanks to Clara's unwavering support and humanity. He confronted his past traumas, shared his stories, and clung to life once more. Homeless veterans like him found renewed hope through this invaluable program, returning to society, feeling a sense of worth. Victor had found a meaningful purpose in the final years of his life. This was a priceless legacy initiated by Clara, with just a small pastry and a cup of coffee. Clara Jensen and Marco Rossi continued to expand the Silent Table program. Mr. Hayes, the bakery manager, was proud of this movement initiated by Clara, even offering to send extra pastries and coffee from the bakery sometimes. Even Lily Adams had come to understand that Clara was not naive, but rather profoundly wise, strong, and deeply understanding of the human spirit. This story illustrates how a small act of kindness can unexpectedly evolve into a significant societal impact, and how true heroism is concealed not in flashy medals, but in daily compassion and selfless mercy. To ensure that more individuals are profoundly moved by powerful human stories such as this, we earnestly encourage you to subscribe to our channel, and if this narrative resonated deeply with you, to express your appreciation by liking this video. In the comments section below, we invite you to share your own poignant stories of silent heroes you have encountered in your life. Individuals like Clara Jensen, whose names you may not know, but whose profound presence you undeniably felt. Perhaps our next compelling story will be profoundly inspired by the experiences you share, or perhaps in a twist of fate it will be your very own story, because ultimately, some stories speak with a resonant power that far transcends mere words and leave the most indelible imprints upon the human soul.